All right. Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Hope everybody's doing well today. It is December 24th, 2017. It's Christmas Eve. And we're on broadcasting this evening. Hopefully, everybody can hear me. We should be live on Facebook also and on YouTube. Okay. So I want to check my volume here. But it'd be what we're on this evening because the Alchemist is going to the Herb Alchemist is going to interview me. You've seen me, you've seen some of her videos on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Okay, and I'm going to bring her on here in just a minute because I will be in Los Angeles end of this year, December 30th and 31st, Saturday and Sunday, speaking at the Caress Unity Center in Los Angeles, California. Okay. And we're going to talk about that and some other things also. We'll talk some about Kwanzaa and culture as well. Okay. So let me get her on here. So just give me just a minute here. And we're going to have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I'm going to give you information here in just a minute. And we know that December 25th is Christmas Day. Many people celebrate Christmas. Some people don't celebrate Christmas. But Kwanzaa is December 26th through January the 1st each year, right? December 26th through January the 1st. And it's a cultural holiday, not a religious holiday. So we're going to talk some about Kwanzaa, the importance of Kwanzaa, what Kwanzaa celebrates. It celebrates family, community, and culture. Family, community, and culture. Pan-African, African-American holiday celebrated around the world, largely in the United States. And regardless of your religion, regardless of your knowledge of history or anything like that, you can still celebrate Kwanzaa. Okay, so I'll be at the Caress Unity Center in Los Angeles. I'll be there Saturday, December 30th, and Sunday, December 31st. Both days, the event is 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I have to get used to that different time zone. All right. A Herb Alchemist. Log in with Google Chrome. Log in with Google Chrome. It's not letting me. It's not even showing that you are logged in. Log in with Google Chrome. Okay. And Caress Unity Center of African Spiritual Sciences is located at 7825 Southwestern Avenue, Los Angeles, California. 7825 Southwestern Avenue, Los Angeles, California. Okay. So both days free, open to the public, free event, donations accepted. So I'm the keynote speaker on Saturday, December 30th. This is their Kwanzaa celebration, celebrating the fifth principle of Kwanzaa, which is Nia, which means purpose. Nia, which means purpose. Okay. And I'm going to test my volume here. So my presentation, okay, that's good. All right, so we got some people on. A happy Kwanzaa to everybody. Matunda ya Kwanzaa, okay. Happy Kwanzaa to everybody. Kelly and Leslie from Chicago. Frederick, okay. Happy holidays to everybody. Happy Kwanzaa. And my presentation on Saturday, December 30th in Los Angeles will be, what is Kwanzaa? Reconnecting African Americans to African culture for self-empowerment in the Donald Trump era. You don't want to miss this one. This one, I do my presentation, what is Kwanzaa? And when people see it, it blows them away, right? I've done it in the past, and each year is different, okay? Last year here in Detroit, I dealt my presentation for Kwanzaa, the second day of Kwanzaa, Kuji Chagalia, at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. And the Malcolm X grassroots movement has me in each year as the keynote speaker for their Kwanzaa event. Okay. Okay, we'll bring Herb Alchemist on here in just a minute. So just trying to connect with her. So just accept it. Last year, because in Detroit, we were going into our celebration and commemorance of the 50-year anniversary of the Detroit Rebellion, which started July 23rd, 1967, at the intersection of 12th and Claremont here in Detroit. So last year, the theme was dealing with resistance movements of African people around the country and outside of the country, right? So last year, I dealt with what is Kwanzaa and the history of it and the the traditional first fruits celebration that Kwanzaa is based upon. Okay, Herb Alchemist, you have to accept I sent you an invitation. You got to accept it. Okay, and then we can bring you on. So I dealt with that and how Kwanzaa celebrates family, community, and culture. Okay, how Kwanzaa celebrates family, community, and culture. I deal with some traditional first fruit harvest celebrations that Kwanzaa is based upon, coming out of ancient Kemet, Pert in Men, coming out of ancient Kemet, coming out of Nubia, Ta-Nehisi. Okay, different African societies celebrated first fruit harvest festivals. We see them amongst the Yoruba in Nigeria, amongst the Akan in Ghana. We see them in South Africa. We see them throughout Africa. Okay, so when you look at Kwanzaa, it was taking different elements from these first fruit harvest festivals that were traditionally celebrated, okay, throughout Africa. All right, not just in East Africa, but we see them in West Africa as well. Is taking those and creating an African American holiday which incorporated our experiences. Okay, anytime African people go around the world, anytime they go into different lands, they're going to take spiritual systems with them. They're going to take traditions with them. They're going to take cultural celebrations with them. Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango, who wrote the book African People and European Holidays and Mental Genocide, okay, volume 1 and volume 2. All right, he talks about how African people spent 1/3 of the year, at least 1/3 of the year, in celebration because they worked together, got the job done. They used Ujima, collective work and responsibility, the third principle of the Nguzo Saba, the third principle of Kwanzaa. Okay, so last year at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, the second day of Kwanzaa, Kuji Chagalia, Malcolm X grassroots movement, they always sponsor that day and organize that day. So I've been their keynote speaker for the past 4 years. I think this will be the 5th year. Last year, because we were beginning to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the 1967 Detroit Rebellion, my presentation was called In Glock We Trust. In Glock We Trust. Okay, we got Herb Alchemist on. Okay, stand by. So last year, my presentation was called In Glock We Trust. Okay, the ballot and the bullet. How African Americans fought back against white supremacy with voting rights, economic boycotts, and slave rebellions. Okay, so I dealt with resistance movements of African people, not just in this country, but in Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, around the world, Iran, wherever African people went or were dispersed because of slavery, the transatlantic slave trade, and even the slave trade even the Arab slave trade, we fought back. All right. So this year, I'll be once again at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, second day of Kwanzaa. That will be Wednesday, December 27th, keynote speaker. That's 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. 315 East Warren Avenue, Detroit, Michigan. And but I'll be in Detroit the first 3 days of Kwanzaa, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Charles H. Wright Museum each day, and I'll be a vendor. Second day of Kwanzaa, Kuji Chagalia, and I speak. I'm the keynote speaker, 7:15 p.m. And then I'm in Atlanta on the fourth day of Kwanzaa on Friday, December 29th, at the Shrine of the Black Madonna for screening of Black Friday Part 2. And then on the 5th day, Nia, and the 6th day, Kaumba, I am in Los Angeles with Herb Alchemist here at the Carest Unity Center. So, Hotep, sister, how you doing today?
Peace, beloved. I'm well. I apologize. I was having some technical difficulties on my end, but I'm here
All
now.
right, your volume is low here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, and if you have some earbuds, plug them in because I'm getting some feedback. I think I can hear your speaker here also. Okay, so we're on YouTube. How's everybody doing on YouTube? Uh, YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP on YouTube. People asking where they can get this shirt from. You can get this from Power in One clothing company, PIO.com. I think it is Power in One. Look them up. I need to. I saw the brothers at the Black Power Awards weekend in Atlanta. I was there in November. I said, look, man, I said we're gonna have to talk about a having me as a spokesperson, man, an endorsement deal. Because anytime I wear this shirt on my Facebook Live broadcast, people say, "Where can I get this shirt from?" So I'm gonna have to talk to them about an endorsement deal.
I heard
All right.
that.
So,
Unfortunately, my earbuds aren't compatible with my laptop. Are you still getting feedback from me? Does it sound bad?
it sounds better. Okay. So
Okay.
let's go. So we got the Herb Alchemist on. You see some of her videos on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and she's helping arrange for me to come to Los Angeles. So I appreciate that. So how you doing today, sister?
I'm good. I'm very good. So I wanted to do this interview with you in particular because this will be your first time on the West Coast. I I'm a member of the Karas Unity Center. We are a Center of African Spiritual Science based out of Los Angeles at 7825 Western Avenue. And the overall base of the center is African spirituality, largely dealing with Kemetic principles and things of that nature. And so oftentimes we have different events, cultural events, and just celebrating African culture. And of course, we'll definitely be honoring Kwanzaa. And so we have decided to make the main featured event on the day of Nia, which is purpose, Swahili for purpose. And so we'll be having a number of performers that day. We'll have African dancers, my sister Kateria Knows will be speaking on Nia and, purpose from a metaphysical standpoint. We'll also have the Mooney Twins there doing some comedy. We'll also have, just a number of singers. And of course, we'll have you there as our keynote speaker. So I'm really excited because this is going to be your first time on the West Coast, which is unbelievable. We're very honored.
I've never been. Well, it's not my first time on the West Coast. First time in California. I've been to Nevada before.
Okay.
But yeah, my first time. I've never been to California. Never been to Los Angeles. So yeah, this will be a first. And let me say this also. Okay, so I'll be there for the December 30th, which is Saturday. I'll be there Saturday, December 30th, 31st, January 1st, and January 2nd, and January 3rd. Okay, so if you want to book me to do a radio interview, any type of interview while I'm in the West Coast, email me at info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Or if you want me to do a lecture while I'm out there, we can try to make that happen also. Email me info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And Brittany's helping me set up, Herb Alchemist helped me set up some things also as well. Okay, go ahead, sister.
Yes, so what I was mentioning is our event that we're having on the 30th, and it begins at 3 p.m. It'll go till 7 p.m. It's also a dinner as well. We'll be enjoying some good, wholesome food. It's also a susu for our center, for Karas Unity Center. Karas has been a pillar in the African American, or I would say the conscious community in particular. It's been a place where all our lecturers can come from, brain fart, excuse me.
Would
Just
lecturers come from where?
all of our master teachers, when they come to Los Angeles, they typically will go to uh, Carras Unity Center. The name that I was attempting to mention is Ashraf Kwesi. Ashraf
Yeah.
Kwesi comes there often to do his presentations, on the origins of Christianity. We've had Brother Ranoka Rashidi there a number of times. And just, various sisters and brothers will come to Carras in particular. We always keep the doors open and make it available, make the space for our family to be able to come and present and teach as you'll be coming and doing your presentation on the 31st. And so it takes a lot to keep the center up and running. And so it's also a way that we can give back to the center to make sure that it can continue to thrive in our community. And so,
go ahead.
Yeah. And so the reason I wanted to do this interview is also to just introduce you more to our community in Los Angeles and just give them a brief taste of exactly what you'll be presenting when you come out to Los Angeles. And so I wanted to first ask you, what is culture and why is it important for one to know one's culture?
Okay. And before we get to that, very quickly, the website for Power in One Clothing, PIOclothing.com. I had to Google it. PIOclothing.com. You can get shirts like this. Tell them you found out from Michael Imhotep on Facebook, okay? Because I need to set up an endorsement deal with these brothers too. Because every time I wear this shirt, people order it from them. All right, PIOclothing.com. Okay, so very quickly, when we deal with culture, all right, culture is something that people oftentimes talk about a lot, but really don't deal with what it is. And I deal with this in my presentation. I'll talk about this in the presentations that I do in Los Angeles and here in Detroit. So basically, culture deals with a people's way of doing various things. It deals with their music, their art, their dance, their language, spiritual systems. It deals with their cosmology. Cosmology deals with understanding the universe as an orderly system. It deals with their cosmogony. Cosmogony deals with a people's understanding of the origins of the universe and the role that they play in the universe as well. Okay, are you, and that applies to cosmology as well. But are you here to be in harmony with nature? Or do you see yourself as part of nature, or are you here to dominate nature, to destroy the ecology, to destroy species in the name of advancement? Are you here to are you here to profit off of the earth, or do you understand that you can't own the land, that land owns you? And when we deal with traditional African cultures, when we deal with traditional like Native American cultures, they understood that you can't own the land owns you. The land sustains you. You plant crops, you eat from those crops. If you eat animals, the land sustains the animals usually. Okay, if you have, so for instance, herbivorous or omnivorous animals, okay, they eat plants or they eat plants and other animals. All right, and then oftentimes in various cultures, when you pass on to the next realm, or spiritual realm, or you die, however you want to phrase it, oftentimes you're buried. When you're buried, your body decomposes over a period of time and goes back, becomes part of the earth once again. So traditional understandings of the universe understood that you can't own the land owns you. So this deals with a people's culture. A people's culture is tied to their history. Okay, a people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. A people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community, because things happen in cycles. So you can't really separate a people's culture from their history. They're interconnected and intertwined. A people's culture influences their psychology. Okay, their psychology influences their actions and behaviors. Their psychology influences their thoughts. This comes from their culture. Culture is influenced by historical events, the rituals people have. There's celebrations, things like this, commemorate various cultural events, various astronomical events. Okay. So, and as Dr. Linda Jeffries and Professor James Small, two of my teachers, as they talk about, and I deal with in some of my presentations, your history and culture gives you your foundation. A lot of people want to say economics is our foundation. No, economics is not the foundation. Economics is very important. Be the first one to tell you that. My degree's in business administration. Okay. So I know about this more than most people. The foundation is the history and culture. It gives you your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. This influences your economic empowerment and influences your political empowerment. Okay. So the culture is very important. And what Kwanzaa does is Kwanzaa celebrates three main things: family, community, and culture. Family, community, and culture. All right. So that in a nutshell deals with culture, and culture is the cohesiveness that binds a people together. And a people's culture teaches them that the only way they're going to survive is through self-reliance. So this is why every ethnic group in America, for the most part, are the largest employers of their own people. They have their history and culture intact. Yes, they deal with politics. If you think they don't deal with politics, that's not true at all. Yes, they deal with politics, but they use the money that they make from their businesses. They use that to influence their politics, so they get something in return. All right. So that in a nutshell kind of deals with helps us to better understand culture. We're at a deficit because other people understand their cultures and we don't understand ours for the most part.
Right. Wow, that was a really great answer. There was so much embedded in that. And what I largely heard as a basis, to be honest, is that culture, it also takes time, to develop. I think, especially from my understanding as an herbalist, I make cultures of different herbs, and I will put like maybe, for instance, if I'm working on a formula for inflammation, I may put ginger together with turmeric, and then I'll add some organic sulfur to that, and then I'll allow it to sit and take time to coagulate, so that it can really be strong, so it can really be potent. And see, what I find difficult about the African American paradigm, we are our own culture, but we are subsets of many different cultures that have come together, and what I find, well, because we can be such a mixture sometimes. Like for instance, on my mother's side is really where, I'm Trinidadian American by nationality.
Right.
And so on my mother's side, my mother's African American, but within that, she is part Native American. She's Cherokee. And then she also has relatives, that are French Creole. Out of New Orleans. And then also has West African blood in there as well. And so, when it comes to African Americans, I feel that we have to do so much digging to really understand who we are. And I think that sometimes it really takes you just awakening your DNA, which requires fasting, because your ancestors will naturally really tell you who you are, and the power of all of your family's history is embedded in your genetic coding, in your DNA. And I personally, just from understanding my own journey and understanding my culture, it took me pulling back those layers to really understand who I am. Walking that journey. A lot of people ask me oftentimes, well, why do you dress the way that you dress? Because sometimes I appear very East Indian or, sometimes very East African. And, if they know anything about Trinidad, we are a culture that is a hybrid culture of East India and West Africa, and so it's interesting to me when I see my generation of African Americans in particular trying to find a way back to themselves, it can sometimes be a challenge. And that's why I love things such as Kwanzaa, because it gives you, in a sense, a lead back into African culture. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
And
Let me just say this. Let me just say this quickly. You talked about, and some people are saying they're getting some feedback. Those watching on Facebook, let me know if you're getting some feedback when Herb Alchemist talks.
I
Okay.
can turn it down.
Oh, yeah,
Is
turn
that
it down some because I'm hearing it through the headphones also.
is that better?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I get. I think so. Okay. So when you talk about how African Americans have to do more digging,
Yeah.
the reason why is because African Americans have been stripped of their history and culture through the enslavement process largely. Okay. So we have to do more digging. We have to find our ancestral roots connecting us to Africa. All right. So I have Cherokee and Blackfoot Indian on my mother's side of the family. I know that. But when it comes to the African connection, I don't know what that is. I have to do more digging. I have to do a DNA test. I have to do more digging to find that out. And then even though, on my mother's side of the family, she's one of the historians. They've plotted their family tree going back some generations. But there's not an African connection there connecting us to Africa because they don't know that. All right. So this is something taken away in the enslavement process, but also our nationality was taken away as well. Okay, so this is something very important. So this is why African Americans have to do more work because many of us are an amalgamation. We may, and it is true that African people have been in this land we call the United States of America at least 51,700 years. We are the original people of this land. Okay, but that does not mean the transatlantic slave trade didn't happen either. If you understand a chronology of history of the last 50,000 years, you'll understand that a number of different things have happened. The Khoisan were here, who come from Southern Africa, the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. You have African presence from ancient Kemet. We just had Professor Kabahaya Kamene, Booker T. Coleman here, one of my teachers, here doing a 2-day lecture series in Detroit that dealt with the early African presence here in America, going back tens of thousands of years. The pyramid mounds, they built things like this, right? So, and you had about 100 different ethnic groups of African people brought to this land during the transatlantic slave trade. Okay. And you're going to have an intermixing of those. Some of us have ancestry that goes back to indigenous African people before Native Americans even come into existence. Then some of us are going to have Native American blood. And then we have, African blood of those who were brought here during the transatlantic slave trade as well. So we have to do more research because when we start out, we're operating at a deficit. Many people of different ethnic groups here in America, they still have relatives in their homelands that they know. They know which city they're in. They've traveled there. They can pick up the phone and call them. Okay.
Right.
We're operating at a deficit, but that is your foundation, your history and culture.
Right. That's very true. And yet and still we have a lot of things within us that we naturally have been able to tap into. Yet and still, because our DNA is still present. Like for instance, hip hop, which is, from my understanding, the latest culture that's taken over the world. And within the hip hop culture, like when you trace hip hop back, like Brother KRS-One and Professor Griff have traced back the roots of hip hop.
Right.
It started much before what happened, or with the resurgence of it in the 70s, and
Right.
With Kool Herc, bringing the turntables and bringing the elements to the forefront, and that's because we have our DNA. And so, as an herbalist, I have studied all the ways in which our DNA is under attack, and I don't want to go too far deep into that. But what I want to mention is that when we are able to heal ourselves, and we're able to fast and we're able to cleanse and we're able to tap into our DNA to a point where your ancestors will communicate with you, and your ancestors will lead you to, will lead you to your journey of rediscovering yourself and rediscovering who you are, which I think is very important. And also we have to remember that we are infinite, essentially, and that, we have created, in a sense, a new culture as African Americans. And that's why I love the idea of Kwanzaa, because it's a part of the new culture that we have created as a people. And it's something that can unite us all. And so I just wanted to speak to you more about Kwanzaa. And if you could just explain, for some people, they have no idea. They hear the word Kwanzaa, they know it's a celebration, but they don't really know what Kwanzaa is exactly. So can you just talk to us about what Kwanzaa is and give us a breakdown of each day individually?
Sure. Well, Kwanzaa is an African-American Pan-African holiday. It's celebrated in about approximately 20 million people around the world. Majority of them probably in the United States. But it's celebrated in different, you have different cities in Africa that celebrate it. It's created in 1966 by Dr. Maulana Karenga, not Malana Karenga, Maulana Karenga, M-A-U. Maulana is a male's name. Malana is a female's name. Okay. And also members of Organization US. Okay. If you go to Organization US, if you go to their official website, it'll tell you on their website, because I researched this, it'll tell you that it was members of Organization US and Maulana Karenga that founded Kwanzaa. It wasn't him by himself. And that's just me doing research. And I talked to one of my teachers about this, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and I talk about this in my presentation. And he confirmed with me. He said it was members of Organization US as well who helped found Kwanzaa. So it comes from the Kiswahili term Matunda ya Kwanzaa, which means first fruits. Okay. And this deals with the first fruits harvest festivals that we see in different traditional African societies. We see them in ancient Kemet. It's called Pert in Men, I-N-M-I-N, P-E-R-T, meaning the coming forth of men. We see it in we know ancient Kemet, which today the Arabs call Egypt, all right, land of the blacks. And we see it in Ta-Nehisi, okay, or what the Greeks call Nubia, Ta-Nehisi or Ta-Seti. We see it in amongst the Yoruba. We see in Nigeria. We see it in Ghana. If we look at, for instance, in let's see, you have it in among the Zulu. It was called Umkosi, Umkhosi, Umkosi. So you have it in different traditional African societies, and this is celebrating the first fruits. Amongst the Ashanti and in the Ashanti and Yoruba festivals, it was usually referred to as the New Yam Festival, YAM. Okay, so what happens is they drew from in creating this African American holiday, which once again is not a religious holiday, even though it does revere and honor the creator's force. Or spirit, or however you want to put it. You don't have to belong to a particular religion to celebrate Kwanzaa, okay? You can be Christian, Muslim, what have you. Now, there's 7 days. Kwanzaa is celebrated December 26th through January the 1st, and there's 7 principles. There's a different principle each day. First one is Umoja, which means unity. You have Kujichagulia, which means self-determination, collective work and responsibility, Ujima, Ujamaa, cooperative economics, Nia, which means purpose, Koumba, creativity, and the last one, Imani, faith. Now, it's the last day is on January the 1st, which is New Year's Eve. It's 7 days on purpose so that you carry these principles over into the new year. Okay, the goal is not to be super black for 7 days out of the year. The goal is to be conscious and African 365 days of the year, not be super black for 7 days and then go back to being a Negro the rest of the year. That's not the goal of Kwanzaa. Okay?
Right.
So we have to understand this. And once again, it's a time to celebrate family, community, and culture, to reflect on the previous year, to reflect on what happened, accomplishments, things like this, the plan for the following year. Oftentimes with Kwanzaa celebrations, we'll focus on the culture, right? We'll focus on the African dance and the naming ceremonies and things like this, but don't realize, okay, what do we need to plan for the coming year? What is our strategy? Things like this. What are we faced with? So when I do my presentations in Los Angeles, Saturday, December 30th, I'm the keynote speaker at the Kyrest Unity Center, 7825 Southwestern Avenue, Los Angeles, California. That presentation will be on what is Kwanzaa, reconnecting African Americans to African culture for self-empowerment in the Donald Trump era, because we have to have a shift. We dealing with this fool Trump, okay? And I'm telling you, 2018 is not going to be a joke. 2017 is crazy, okay? I watch between 6 and 10 hours of MSNBC a day. I do research all day long. If you follow our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, you see a lot of the content I post, okay? 2018 ain't going to be a joke. And I don't think he's going to make it to the end of the year. I think he's going to be forced to resign, all right? And he's scared to death. I'm telling you, Trump is scared to death. This is why he's trying to undermine the FBI, because he knows they are getting close to him, all right? And 2018 is going to be crazy. So midterm elections are coming up November 6, 2018. So the question that African Americans have to pose is, what is our political strategy?
Right.
Because they're trying to implement voter suppression once again on African Americans. Why? Because Republicans fear, listen to me, Republicans fear the power of the African American vote. This is why they work so hard to suppress it in the 2016 presidential election. This is why in Alabama, the special election for U.S. Senator to replace the U.S. Senate seat made vacant by Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, who's now the Attorney General, who's going to be one of the worst Attorney Generals for African Americans. They had rapid voter suppression that took place. But African Americans organized and mobilized, helped finance a lot of their own initiatives, and came out and supported Doug Jones because his policies best lined up with what their agenda was. And they were able to defeat Roy Moore, who was horrible, who was a horrible candidate for a number of reasons, right? So with us understanding this and understanding politics impacts every aspect of your life, from the water you drink to the air you breathe to the food you eat, and understanding that politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and also politics is the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement, then how are we going to mobilize for the 2016 elections? Because all 435 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives are up. So if you want to get any initiative that African Americans want to get passed through Congress right now, through the House of Representatives, you need Republicans to vote for it. Why? Because there are 239 Republicans in the House of Representatives and only 193 Democrats. And there are 3 seats that are vacant. So one of the reasons why this past year has been so detrimental for African Americans is because Republicans control the House of Representatives, but they also control the U.S. Senate. And the U.S. Senate is involved in confirmation hearings of Supreme Court justices. This is how Neil Gorsuch, who's a horrible candidate for Supreme Court, he was so bad that he couldn't get 60 votes. They needed 60 votes to get this white man confirmed. He was such a horrible candidate that they had to lower the standard to 51 votes so this unqualified white man could become Supreme Court justice. And this is what they did in the U.S. House of Representatives. Keep in mind, this was a U.S. Senate seat that Mitch McConnell and the gang of Republicans stole from President Barack Obama, because President Barack Obama nominated Merrick Garland, to be his Supreme Court nomination. The Republicans, because they controlled the U.S. Senate, did not have any hearings for Merrick Garland. So he sat out there for a year. Then when Trump wins, now Trump nominates Neil Gorsuch, because that was a name on the list presented to Trump from the Heritage Foundation. People need to research the Heritage Foundation, one of these right-wing conservative think tanks. This is where Neil Gorsuch came from. Totally unqualified white male to be Supreme Court justice. He was 49 when he was nominated. He can be on the Supreme Court for the next 30 or 40 years, because this is a lifetime appointment. So when we look at things that are shaping up for 2018 and how Trump is stacking the federal bench, the federal courts with very young, conservative, white male judges, he has gotten 12 federal judges confirmed. This is a record for a president in his first year. Many of those seats that are being filled on the federal courts were seats that were open under President Obama, and his nominations were blocked because Republicans control the U.S. Senate. So many African Americans don't understand how this stuff is shaping up against us. And 2018 is going to be a crazy year. Roland Martin just did a broadcast today about this article from the New York Times about Alabama. People need to read this article, and then we'll continue. People need to read this article. It's called Black Turnout in Alabama Complicates Debate on Voting Laws. Black Turnout in Alabama Complicates Debate on Voting Laws. And what this article is saying is that, okay, so because we had such a huge turnout of African Americans in Alabama, December 12th for the special election for U.S. Senate, then does this really mean that the voter suppression laws, the voter ID laws are really a problem? Can we leave those in place because we had so many African Americans come out? That's dangerous because they're designed to suppress the African American vote and the Hispanic vote. Okay, people need to read this article because one of the things that this fake voter fraud commission that Donald Trump has put together, one of the recommendations from this voter integrity commission is to raise the minimum age required to vote from 18 to 21. Why? Because they know for the 2020 presidential election, you're going to have about 12 million new voters, young, people of color, African Americans, Hispanic, and most of them ain't voting for Republicans. So one of the things that they're going to try to do, you're going to see an initiative pushed this year, is to raise the minimum voting age from 18 to 21. Now, you should ask yourself this question. Well, if your vote didn't matter, why is Trump putting together a voter integrity commission?
Right.
Why are they making recommendations? Why are they manipulating these laws to make it harder to vote if your vote doesn't matter? So our vote matters to Republicans fear our vote more than we actually understand the power of our vote.
See, and that's something, personally, just being a part of the younger generation, I was very much so interested and involved in politics, more so like in high school, as part of I was taking advanced placement government. And I think just as I got older and I got more involved with the spiritual community, that became more my focus. And, the last time I voted, don't get mad at me, but the last time I voted was for President Barack Obama. And, as I've been
2008 or 2012, because he ran twice.
I'm not going to answer.
This is
I'm
one
not
of
going to answer that.
I'm African centered, right? But
yeah.
I'm a practical African centered person.
Right.
I understand the intersection between history and culture, economics and politics. Professor James Small is one of my teachers, and Dr. Leonard Jeffries. They talk about both of this, okay? Because they're old enough to understand. And see, one of the things I try to explain to people is that you're not going to be able to metaphysically transport yourself back to 3000 BC in ancient Kemet, because too many of our people are trying to do like too many Christians. So we have a saying about Christians. They're so heavily bound in no earthly good. Some Christians want to be so holy and sanctified that they focus on going to heaven and don't plan for the future here on earth. Well, you got a lot of people in the African Senate community. They're so metaphysical and spiritual. They're trying to transport themselves back to 3000 BC so they don't have to deal with white supremacy, don't have to deal with what's going on here and plan for the future. One wears a cross, the other wears an ankh, but they still in the same boat. So we have to be practical when we deal with this, okay? So these are some of the things I do in my presentations, because I've heard all the theories and the arguments and all this stuff. And quite frankly, a lot of those people are broke too. So question I ask. You got another group of people that talk about law and treaty this and nationality that and all
And I
this.
got caught up with them too.
So question I asked them, I've been in their classes, I've studied a lot of their stuff. Some of it has some merit. Question I asked them, okay, where your grocery stores, where your gas stations, where your radio stations, where your TV stations, where your multi-story buildings? How many houses do you own in this community? Where is this? Okay. So if you have a superior level of knowledge when it comes to law, show me the physical manifestation of your pontification. Show me the physical manifestation of your pontification. If you got a superior knowledge of treaties and laws and all this stuff, then you should have a physical manifestation of economics that's on par with your level of law. If you don't have that, it's a problem. See, if you got this superior level of law, but you're working for Europeans, that's a problem.
Right. I agree. And that's why I'm so grateful for you, Brother Imhotep, because what you bring to the community is so imperative. And it's really a portion that we are really missing out on in a major way. And it's something that's very important. Ever since I've been following the African History Network page, I have definitely noticed the necessity, the need to, put my ear more to politics. And, I'm definitely going to vote. I'm going to vote next time. Okay.
Well, what happens is when people have to understand when you vote for any candidate, right? Regardless of party.
Yeah.
First of all, you have to have issues that you're concerned about. The issues that you are concerned about is based upon your understanding of history and current events. Secondly, you have to look at how their policies, because all candidates have policies, most of them, unless they have no clue what they're talking about. But even Trump had policies. This is why I told people during the 2016 election, up until April of this year, I was doing national radio 5 days a week. So all last year, I was doing national radio 5 days a week. People can go listen to the podcast of my radio shows at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. On the homepage, click on the link, listen to podcasts of Michael Imhotep, right? So I told people all throughout last year, we did the fact checking on statements that the candidates made, the fact checking on the 3 debates between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. We looked at their websites, DonaldJTrump.com, HillaryClinton.com. We looked at their policies. And I told people, go to both their websites, read all of their policies on both their websites, and see how their policies best match up with what your issues are, what you are concerned about. Now, what people didn't understand were the policies that President Obama had in place. Many of them benefited African Americans, and Donald Trump has been reversing them. And Donald Trump has had over 100 policy reversals, most of them from the President Obama administration, that he has reversed. Many people didn't even know these policies existed. And they're going to have a detrimental impact. Well, number one, they're having a detrimental impact. It's going to be even more acute in 2018. This is an example of how elections have consequences. Okay. So a lot of people didn't realize that a lot of the policies President Obama put in place, like curtailing the war on drugs. The war on drugs was winding down under President Obama. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III just redeclared it March 12, 2017. I saw the press conference when he did it. I said, uh-oh. So this is not good. Okay. Many people don't know about the 2013 initiative from President Obama's Department of Justice, Smart on Crime, which was backing away from charging low-level nonviolent drug offenders with the longest, harshest sentences. Jeff Sessions just reversed that. Okay. So there are a number of things. And then when people talk about the Affordable Health Care Act, well, a lot of people don't know that the uninsured rate for African Americans is the lowest it has ever been in the history of this country, which means more African Americans today have health insurance than any other time in history, which is why the average life expectancy of African Americans is the highest it's ever been at 72 years. There's a direct correlation. And if you understand that the number one reason why people file bankruptcy is because of medical bills, then when you have more African Americans who can get health insurance and have preventive and can take preventive measures, then you can reduce the number of African Americans that have to file bankruptcy. You can reduce a lot of this debt that African Americans incurred from medical bills and going to the emergency rooms and things like this. This is direct correlation. There were a lot of issues on the ballot, policies from President Obama, that are being reversed right now and have been reversed. But we didn't know what was at stake. And it was a huge mistake. So what people have to understand when it comes to voting, whether it's local, state, or national, is not just a candidate that you're voting for, but it's also any progress or gains you made in the last 2, 4, 6 years, because that's at stake of being reversed. So you also have to protect the gains you've made or progress that you made. But you have to be able to assess what has happened in the past few years, 2, 4, 6 years, to understand what has to be protected. And this is a mistake that we made. And we're paying a price for this, because after they did this horrific tax cut, it's not tax reform, it's a tax cut. By 2027, 83% of the benefits go to the top 1%. Now, what they're talking about now is cutting the social safety net, because this is what Republicans wanted to do. They wanted to go after welfare. They want to go after Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, the SNAP program. They're talking about gutting that now, because this tax bill is going to blow a $1.5 trillion deficit in the federal budget. So then they're going to say, well, to shore this up, we're going to have to cut these entitlement programs. And that's going to have a devastating impact on African Americans. It's going to cause more strife in the streets. So if you understand 1964, April 3rd, 1964, Malcolm X delivered the Ballot or the Bullet in Cleveland, Ohio, right? If you understand how much of the strife that we see in the streets are the side effects of bad public policies, then if we vote more strategically, okay, and if we cast more ballots at the ballot box, we can actually save some bullets in the street. Because the reason why many people want to legally carry guns, African Americans, is to protect themselves from all this craziness on the street. Well, a lot of that criminality, a lot of that craziness are the side effects of bad public policies written by politicians who are also called lawmakers.
Right.
So we have to understand the correlation between the two.
Right. See, well, I'm now understanding the importance of it. My understanding also is that there are so many layers. So for a person like myself who has far removed themselves from the political arena, in terms of getting back in, what would you say would be like the first step of understanding? You mentioned local, state, and national. So are there websites that we can go to that will keep us up to date with, when it is time to vote, for?
Well, number one, you want to look at your local news websites, whatever in your city, Los Angeles Times, whatever it is, local daily news, local African American news sources. Then you can read publications like AtlantaBlackStar.com, websites like AtlantaBlackStar.com. Okay, but the closer the politics is to you, the greater chance you have of being able to control the politics or having a big impact on it. So the local politics, not just city council and mayor, but also prosecutors, because prosecutors are the ones that charge police officers. Prosecutors are the ones that prosecute criminals. Some criminals need to be in prison. Some criminals need to be in prison. Okay. Then the state legislature is extremely important. So your local newspapers, your local African American news sources also, they deal with the state legislature. State legislatures are kicking our behinds across the country. It's about 32, 33 state legislatures right now are controlled by Republicans. They have about 33 governorships out of 50, only 50 states. 33 state legislatures are controlled by Republicans. What most people don't know is they don't understand that when Republicans control 38 states out of 50, That means they can amend the U.S. Constitution. Because to amend the U.S. Constitution,
Mm-hmm.
that amendment has to pass 3/4 of the state legislatures by a 2/3 majority vote. And Republicans want to amend the 14th Amendment of 1868. And they're close to being able to do this. Now, they're going to suffer a backlash. If people get out and vote, they're going to suffer a backlash November 6, 2018 midterm elections. Because now so many people across the country are seeing how politics impacts every aspect of their life, especially when you talk about taking away their health care. And so what Republicans did was, in this 1,100-page budget that just passed, okay, at the end of last week, this 1,100-page budget, 6,000 lobbyists were involved in putting things into this budget to benefit the people who they lobby for and the entities and the industries they lobby for. One of the things they put in this budget was to repeal the mandate of the Affordable Health Care Act, which is going to strike a blow to the Affordable Health Care Act, ostensibly known as Obamacare. But this is going to increase premiums all across the board, regardless of whether you have the Affordable Health Care Act or not. Okay, so because a tax cut, because this ain't tax reform, it's a tax cut for the wealthy. Because that's not as sexy as the Affordable Health Care Act or healthcare, they were able to stick this in there, and you didn't have nearly as much of an uprising of people coming to attack it and put pressure on their members of the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate not to vote for it. So it passed. It's going to have a horrific effect. The other thing was they did this in December. Many people are distracted by the holiday and holiday shopping.
That was
so they were able to attack people in December when people pay the least amount of attention to the news. These are some demons we're dealing with. They know what they're doing. These are some demons. They're playing grandmaster level chess. We're playing beginner's checkers and don't even understand all the rules to checkers. So state legislatures are very, very important.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of the distribution of resources that comes from the federal government comes from their budget. So back in, I think, October, they passed a $4.1 trillion federal budget. That's for fiscal year 2018, right? That has over $150 billion worth of cuts to the SNAP program and other social services programs. And then they're going to come back and gut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, disability insurance, all this stuff. These are demons we're dealing with. So we have to be very clear. So what can millennials do, right? What can millennials do? Unfortunately, you had a lot of millennials who, in this past presidential election, they wanted to vote for Jill Stein, who was over in Russia December 2015 with Vladimir Putin and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. I dealt with this in February on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation here in Detroit. People got mad at me. Now Senator Dick Durbin, Republican, who heads up the Senate Intelligence Committee, who has their own investigation into the Trump campaign in Russia. This past week, Thursday, they said, we want to talk to Jill Stein. He was asked why. He said possible collusion with Russia. Well, this was what I was talking about back in February. Oh, the shoe's about to drop. So millennials and everybody, but especially younger people, well, in their 30s, things like this, look at local news sources, read AtlantaBlackStar.com,
check,
read TheRoot.com, for better or for worse. Not a big fan of some of the writers like Michael Harriot of TheRoot.com, but they still write some good articles. YourBlackWorld.net. MSNBC is a very, very good source of news. MSNBC.com. Go to their website. They have video clips of their news programs. Follow Roland Martin on Facebook. The News One now is ended. Is going to be revamped in 2018. That was one of the best news programs we had because they really dealt with politics for African Americans. Read news1.com. Read the articles there. MSNBC.com, NBC.com. Washington Post, New York Times, because these are news outlets I read on a daily basis. I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
That sounds like a lot. I would
well,
just
what
be
you can
honest.
do, you can sign up for their email newsletters.
Okay.
We have to be serious. If we have time to watch Real Housewives of Atlanta and Love and Hip Hop and all this other nonsense out here, we have time to do this because this has a bigger impact on us than Love and Hip Hop and Cardi B and all this other nonsense out here, Gucci Mane, all this
I
nonsense.
agree.
Another thing people can do, this is something everybody needs to download. This is, you can get this from the website cbc.house.gov. This is from the Congressional Black Caucus, cbc.house.gov. We'll post this on Facebook live broadcast, cbc.house.gov. This document, and I deal with this in some of my presentations, this is called What Did Trump Do? What did Trump do? The first 100 days, hashtag stay woke list. So Donald Trump, towards the end of the 2016 campaign, he asked African Americans, what the hell do you have to lose, right? And he talked about all what he was going to do for African Americans. He ain't done none of it. Because he's a liar and a fraud. He wasn't going to do none of it. Okay, it's a joke. Even if you looked at his plan for African Americans, it's an absolute joke. But what this does is, this looked at the first 100 days in the Donald Trump administration. It looked at policy changes he put in place. It looked at nominations for different heads of departments and things like this. And it showed how these different things had a negative impact on the African American community. It has 100. It has 100 different items. Looked at the first 100 days of the Trump administration. What did Trump do? The first 100 days, hashtag stay woke list. And what this does is, this shows a direct correlation between policies and how it impacts people. Okay,
Right.
shows a direct correlation. Now, many millennials don't understand this correlation because, don't take this the wrong way, any millennials watching, but half of them live at home with their parents. So they're being financially supported by their parents and grandparents. So they don't feel the full repercussions and full consequences of bad decisions that they make, many of them. Okay, not all of them, but you got about half of them living at home with their parents, things like this, or they're on their parents' car insurance, they're on their parents' cell phone plan, they use their parents' passcode for Netflix and Hulu, things like this. They're on their parents' cars. You know, the parents sign for their car insurance. They're on their parents' car insurance. Their parents sign for their apartment, things like this, right? So they could go out, either not vote or vote for Jill Stein or write somebody's name in the 2016 election, not realizing that they're going to make things that much harder for their parents and grandparents who are financially subsidizing their bad decisions.
Right.
This is what happened. Okay. Now, that's one thing you could download. Second thing you could download, these are free to download, right? This is from the Congressional Black Caucus also. This is the 125-page agenda the Congressional Black Caucus presented to Donald Trump in March of 2017 when the executive board of the Congressional Black Caucus met with Donald J. Trump. This is called We Have a Lot to Lose, Solutions to Advance Black Families in the 21st Century. So Donald Trump asked Black people, what the hell do you have to lose? Congressional Black Caucus came back and said, we have a lot to lose. So what this is, now I took this to a printer, got it printed up, right? That's why it's wire bound, everything. But you can download this for free, cbc.house.gov, cbc.house.gov. That's the official website of the Congressional Black Caucus. You can look up each member of the Congressional Black Caucus. So your member of the CBC, you can see bills they voted on, initiatives they sponsored, bills they write. You can see what their platforms are, so you can hold them accountable. They have you can call their offices, things like this. Because when any of these elected officials, when you call their offices, and when people are organized, and this is something white people understand, because one thing I learned about being in radio, and I do radio here in Detroit, 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the African History Network show. One thing I noticed in doing radio for a number of years and doing national radio also, guest hosting for Roland Martin on the Roland Martin show and Warren Ballantyne on his show. One thing I noticed, when Black people get mad, they call radio stations. When white people get mad, they call their elected officials. This is something I learned. And I learned this from also talking to elected officials. When Black people get mad, they call radio stations. They complain and all this stuff. When white people get mad, they call their congressmen, they call their U.S. senators. And when you look at the protests that broke out this past year, right, over the revoking of health care, They were outside, their members of the U.S. House of Representatives, the U.S. Senator's office, raising hell. They were going to town hall meetings. You look at most of that, they're mainly white people. What a lot of white people found out was that the Affordable Health Care Act and Obamacare were the same thing. There was a study, there was an article from New York Times, how 30% of Americans did not know that the Affordable Health Care Act and Obamacare were the same thing. When a lot of poor, sick white people who voted Republican found out that they had Obamacare, but it was called something else. And people were trying to take it away from it. It was saving their lives. They found out the Affordable Health Care Act and Obamacare were the same thing. They lost their minds. And they mobilized and came out and protested. Okay? So download this. So what this does is we have a lot to lose. This, first of all, page 8, they lay out history of African Americans in this country. Because to understand policies that need to be put in place to address our conditions, we have to understand some of the history of how we got into that predicament in the first place. Then they lay out different issues negatively impacting the African American community, whether you're dealing with voter disenfranchisement, criminal justice reform, whether you're dealing with things like, if we look at page 3 here, table of contents, economic justice, education, healthcare, environmental justice. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, is going to be hell on African Americans. They're gutting the EPA. They're gutting the Civil Rights Department of the EPA. They're reversing a lot of these environmental protections that President Obama put in place, which will have a detrimental impact on the African American community because we tend to live in areas that have higher pollution, dumping grounds for toxic waste, all different types of things like this. They deal with rural America. Why? Because more and more African Americans live in rural America. It's not just white people in rural America. Okay, you have more and more African Americans living in rural America. Voting rights, criminal justice reform. So they deal with a number of different issues. Then they actually lay out legislation to address these problems that they lay out. So it shows a direct connection between politics and policies and how they impact your quality of life, how they impact every aspect of your life. Okay, so people need to download this, cdc.house.gov. Now, there are elements in here that every African American organization across the country, regardless of where you are, regardless of whether you're a Black parent organization, Black Lives Matter, Young Millennials, whatever, okay, you can take elements from this to add to your agenda to create a very, very powerful agenda. But to push these issues on a local, state, and national basis, a local, state, and national basis. The third thing you should download is called Indivisible. Indivisible, a practical guide for resisting the Trump agenda. Indivisible. Go to indivisibleguide.com. Indivisibleguide.com. And this was put together by former congressional staffers. And what they did was they looked at strategies that the Tea Party used to fight against President Obama. And they put together this guidebook, this playbook to fight against the Trump agenda. And a lot of the people who were organizing to save the Affordable Health Care Act throughout this past year, they organized, and a lot of these organizations were created based upon this document here, Indivisible. It shows you how to interact with your members of Congress, U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate. It talks about how to play the game to win. People need to download this. It's called Indivisible. And when you see what happened this past year, a lot of these strategies in here definitely work. They have worked. They're proven to work. And when you look at what happened with the Tea Party won the 2010 midterm election in a landslide, which shifted the balance of power in the House of Representatives. So this is why many of President Obama's initiatives got blocked in the House, and then the Democrats lost the U.S. Senate because of the Tea Party, which is now called the Freedom Caucus. So Jim Jordan, representative of Ohio, who you saw in the past couple of weeks, right, who's speaking negatively about the Russia investigation and trying to undermine Robert Mueller's investigation, he was part of the Tea Party, which is now the Freedom Caucus. So you have to be able to connect these dots also. Those are three things people can download. Now, I'm all for Dr. Claude Anderson's one of my teachers, and I know he had a plan in Powernomics, things like that. That's cool. You can take elements from that. Some of it is theory, okay? Some of it's practical application. The one from the Congressional Black Caucus has actual policies. They have the names of the bills, actual bills that are drawn up that need support to be pushed through the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate and signed into law. So those are three things that people can download tonight. Okay. And this is serious because 2018 is going to be very serious. There's a lot at stake. And you got Republicans that are not playing. Okay. They realize and see, they realize that they don't have the numbers, right? They realize they don't have the numbers. So they're going to try to suppress the vote. And they're going to try all different types of strategy. And they did it in 2016. There were 868 less polling places to vote at across the country in 2016. Most people don't even know this. TheNation.com, Ari Berman for TheNation.com wrote a series of articles dealing with the rampant voter suppression that took place. There were 868 less polling places. Why is that? It wasn't because of budget cutbacks. No, this is because they were trying to suppress the vote. Mm-hmm. So we have to, if your vote didn't matter, why are Republicans working so hard to suppress the vote? Because when you study where 95% of these negative laws and bills are coming from, they're coming from Republicans, period.
Right.
This is what I do. I study this thing. When you study where they're coming from Republicans. So those are some things people can do and understand how politics impacts every aspect of their life. I'm all for economic empowerment and things like this. Politics impacts economics. I'm somebody who managed a company, and we had government contracts from the county of Wayne to do janitorial services. That's politics. Legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. Dealing with contracts. I managed a company, and I'm the one that got us contracts with the state of Michigan for training. That's politics. So not only that, I used to be a liaison to the Regional Chamber of Commerce here in Detroit. You think wealthy people don't come to the Regional Chamber of Commerce meetings? You're crazy. And if you think wealthy people don't care about politics, you definitely ain't one of them. The only people who think rich people or wealthy people don't care about politics are poor people. Because if you look just what happened, the reason why this tax bill passed was because of 7 or 8 billionaire families. This was payback for them for financing Republicans' agendas and Republican campaigns. This is what this was for the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, Robert Mercer, for the 7 or 8 families. Okay, this was payback for them. So we really have to understand this. 2018 is going to be crazy. I'm telling you right now.
We do. Yeah. And like I said, you're making me more aware. You know why it's difficult, I would say, for my own self, because it's so much work. There's so much to research. And I'm over here, I'm busy trying to just at least get my generation to stop popping pills and sipping lean. You know,
you popping pills and sipping what? Oh, lean?
Yes. Like it's so much, there's so many layers to, you know, the web that we found ourselves in. And but I'm really going to take ear to this. I'm going to download these documents that you've suggested, and I'm going to see how I can turn it into you know, milk for my generation and make it sound cool. See, that what would make it easy is if brothers like you would run for office. Then I could just be like, oh, this brother's the one. Just vote for him.
Well, look, you have a lot of millennials who have signed up to run for office.
Good.
You're going to have a lot more. You have a lot of women who have registered to run for office. Some of them, we just saw a number of African-American female mayors elected. We saw Keisha Lance Bottoms in Atlanta.
Right.
And you're gonna see more running for various public offices in 2018. That's important. Okay. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Okay. I'm not supposed to be an elected official. I do the 2 most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you know why you were born. Okay.
Yeah.
So Nia, 5th principle of Kwanzaa, purpose. I understand my purpose. All right. It's not to be elected official because I need to be able to speak freely. Okay. Yeah. This is why I have my own company, because I can't work in certain companies. I used to work in corporate America years ago, but I can't do that and tell the truth. I can't do that and speak freely. Right now, I am on the board of Grits and Politics here in Detroit. I deal with politics, but in a different way. I'm on the board of Grits and Politics here in Detroit, and we organize forums to educate our people on how politics impacts every aspect of their life. And we bring in elected officials who are running for office and those who may not be running to deal with what they're doing, how their policies impact the African-American community. And we've exposed some politicians who are running, for instance, for county commissioner, who did not know what the duties of county commissioner were. Oh, it was embarrassing for them. Okay, so I deal with politics, but I deal with it in a different way. I'm on the board of Grits and Politics, here in Detroit. So, so go ahead with your.
Well, if you're not good, I'm gonna run for president. Okay, I'll be the one.
Run for president. So you may start run for mayor or city council. Okay. Work your way up. Start.
I'll do that. No, I have my lane.
The other thing people have to understand is when you vote for a president, right? You're not just voting for one person. There are 4,000 positions Donald Trump has to fill in his administration. Most people don't even know this. There are 4,000 positions he has to fill in his administration. Okay, a president has to nominate attorney general, secretary of education, secretary of HUD. You got Dr. Ben Carson, who knows absolutely nothing about HUD. Okay, he's put there to destroy HUD because Trump was sued. Trump and his white supremacist daddy, Fred Trump, was sued in 1973 by Richard Nixon's Department of Justice for discriminating against African Americans and Hispanics when it came to renting apartments to them. Okay, I think it was in Manhattan. All right, and then they had to pay a settlement. They settled out of court. They paid a settlement. They paid a settlement. Then they were sued 3 years later because they kept discriminating against them. So Trump hates HUD. Mm-hmm. He put Dr. Ben Carson there to destroy HUD.
Yeah,
just like he put Scott Pruitt over the Environmental Protection Agency, because Scott Pruitt hates the EPA. Scott Pruitt has sued the EPA in the past about 17 times. He's put Scott Pruitt there to destroy the EPA. EPA was created by Richard Nixon in the 1970s, Environmental Protection Agency. Okay, so if you look at what Trump is doing, he's putting people over agencies that they hate. He's putting them to destroy them. Mick Mulvaney, who was his budget director, was just put over the Consumer Protection Bureau. Well, that was put in place after the housing crisis. After that burst in the housing bubble, things like this, to protect consumers. Mick Mulvaney hates this Consumer Protection Bureau. He's put over it to destroy it, to gut it, to take the teeth out of it. Okay, so if you think elections have consequences, you really don't understand politics and you don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, clearly. I clearly don't know what's going on, and I'll be the one to honestly state that. I know what's going on in my world because just as much as you say, know your place, I know my place, and my place is health, helping us to uncover the Black genocide. But I do believe that this is a key aspect of what is keeping us down. And so I do think it's very important.
Well, your world is impacted by politics, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah, no, I believe you.
By politics. When people, when politics negatively impacts people's pockets, they have less money to spend with you for your products. You are impacted by politics, whether you understand it or not.
Right.
So this is politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. So Trump has reversed President Obama's stance on privatized prisons because in August of 2016, the Obama administration announced that they were not going to renew the contracts for privatized prisoners, privatized prisons for federal prisoners. Trump has reversed this because Core Civic and Geo Group, which are the two largest owner-operators of privatized prisons, donated almost $600,000 to Donald Trump's campaign. After he said he was going to finance his own campaign, it wasn't going to take money from corporations and billionaires and things like this. He lied.
Right.
Okay. So when you start connecting the dots, you start reading articles at AtlantaBlackStar.com. You read the articles that we post at the African History Network, and on my personal page, Michael Imhotep. You listen to the African History Network show. Go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You listen to podcasts, watch my videos. I deal with all this information. All right. Sure. Because it's what you don't know that will hurt you.
Right.
And this is what's detrimental to African Americans right now, is what we don't know, and how these policies are negatively impacting us.
Right. I think that's the main thing that I'm going to be able to do is just if I can get, most of my Facebook friends and everyone to at least follow the African History Network, because this is your lane, this is your research, and I do take ear, and I check
Yeah,
out the different links that you share, and it really has helped me a lot, just accelerate
right.
my knowledge a whole lot.
And I don't just deal with history. I
Right.
study history for 25 years, understand that, but also studied
Yeah.
economic empowerment. I've taught entrepreneurship. I study politics. So we have to have a synthesis of all of that. Read articles from thehill.com, HILL, thehill.com. Excellent
Mm-hmm.
source for political news. Rawstory.com is
Mm-hmm.
excellent as well. Rawstory.com, a lot of good articles. Be sure to read that article from the New York Times that came out today. um, Black turnout in Alabama complicates debate on voting laws. Black
Mm-hmm.
turnout in Alabama complicates debate on voting laws. Sign up
Right.
for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. We'll post it here on Facebook. You can go to our website also. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828. 22828 for our email newsletter, because we put articles in here, things like this in our email newsletter. And I sent out an email newsletter today, shortly before this broadcast. One of the articles that was in the email newsletter was this one here from news1.com, which is an African American owned news source. Here's why the drug death rate for blacks outpaces other whites. Here's why the drug death rate for blacks outpaces other races. What you need to know about the drug that's killing scores of older African Americans. And this deals with how African Americans are also dying from opioid addiction, especially fentanyl. Okay, fentanyl. Okay, which is being added to cocaine by drug dealers. All
Mm-hmm.
right. And they're talking about how African Americans are also dying from opioid addiction. When we hear about opioids, you just think about white people in West Virginia or Maine or Oregon, Vermont,
Right.
Ohio, but it's also killing now, it's also killing African Americans as well. Okay. So uh, these are issues that we have to deal with.
Yes,
And
indeed.
and we have to be educated on these as well, so we can fight against these types of things also. Go
I
ahead.
agree. Well, that's pretty much um, what I wanted to ask you different questions about. You pretty much covered a lot of the questions that I had regarding your lecture on the 31st, which is titled African American Resistance in the wait. Is it titled African American Resistance? No, that's your Kwanzaa
No.
celebration.
The one on the 31st, New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
Okay.
what's the title for that one?
That presentation is 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And you can visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Right on the homepage, you'll have the information. That presentation is called African American Resistance in the Era of Donald Trump.
Yes. Okay.
Voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. African
Right, right,
American
right.
Resistance in the Era of Donald Trump. Voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. You've never seen anything like this before. This presentation, wherever I do, I've done it in Atlanta, done it here in Detroit a few times. It totally blows people away. And if you can't make it, you can order the presentation from our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also.
Ashe. So yeah, we are very grateful for you coming so far to come and give us this information. Again, I deal a lot with the spiritual community. I worked a lot with the Moors back in 2013, and I was the head of the Young People's Moorish League out in Los Angeles. And so I'm just always trying to find what's important, and I bring it back to the community. And right now, this is very important. I'm recognizing the importance of voting, the importance of keeping an ear to politics and how it affects us, whether we want to believe it or not. Whether we want to stay up in the clouds or not, we're still walking, living, breathing on earth, eating the food, spending the money. We need to be grounded as well. There needs to be a balance of things. And so I think it's really important that people in the spiritual community are also aware, to the level and degree that you make us aware.
Right. And it's not just voting, but it's also pushing an agenda to get something tangible in exchange for your vote, and understand how a candidate's policies match up with your issues.
Yeah.
See, this is something extremely important. Voting is something that you do once every 2, 4, 6 years.
Right.
But the work that you do in between that time is going to have a bigger impact on you. Okay. So it's the work that you do that leads up to the vote. All right. After you've pushed your agendas, after you have eliminated some candidates. And the other thing that we have to understand is that the election day is your day to fire people who have been mistreating you. That's your day to go to the ballot box and fire their behinds. When you sit back and allow people to mistreat you and give away tax breaks to billionaires to build stadiums that most of our people won't be able to afford the parking to go to. Okay. When you don't show up to the ballot box and allow them to stay in office, what this tells them is that you can do all the marching, you can do all the protesting, but when it actually comes time to fire them, you're not going to do it. So you're not really serious. So they continue to mistreat you. Okay. The reason why many of us get treated like N-words is because there's no consequences for treating us like N-words. There are no consequences for mistreating us. When you show up at the ballot box in mass and vote their behinds out of office, especially when it's a crushing landslide defeat, that's humiliating to them. When you talk to any elected official, the thing they fear the most, besides the FBI investigation, is losing their seat, especially in a landslide defeat. Okay, because that's humiliating for them. So we don't understand a lot of the power that we have. One of the reasons why people keep mistreating us is because there are no consequences for mistreating us, especially elected officials. This is why they keep doing it.
Wow. It's a lot to think about. It's a lot. It's a lot of research too. So, well, I'm grateful. Thank you so much for doing this interview.
Well, this is why organizations are important. Organizations that mobilize, have not just voter education forums, but go beyond that and deal with how politics and policies impact every aspect of your life. That's what's extremely important. Way beyond voter education. Deal with how policies from law, because politicians are also called lawmakers, right? Because they write laws.
Right.
Everything is based upon law. Everything is based upon law, whether it's treaties, whether it's amendments, whether it's ordinances, it's all based upon law. Okay. Right. And understanding how that impacts every aspect of your life. This tax bill is going to impact 323 million Americans. Whether you pay taxes or not, because if you don't pay taxes, your parents do, your grandparents do, mama and them pays them or something. It's going to impact every. So when you go through and actually look at what's in this bill, how horrific it is, 2018 is going to be crazy.
Well, we're going to pray. And vote.
All right, well, sister, I know we got to get out of here. So give people your website.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I am an herbalist. I'm the Herb Alchemist. You can find me at AmosHSAMMASHS.com. You can also find me at gleelixir.com. That's GLELIXIR.com. And I specialize in creating living cultured elixirs. So my formulas are extra potent and they work. You can also
extra potent in work. Okay. She's some of our broadcasts here on our Facebook fan page also. So check her out. She'll be in Los Angeles. So once again, I'll be in Los Angeles doing 2 presentations. Saturday, December 30th. That's their Kwanzaa celebration, 5th day of Kwanzaa, Nia, which means purpose, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Carest Unity Center of African Spiritual Science, located at 7825 Southwestern Avenue, Los Angeles, California. I'll have my DVDs there. I'm the keynote speaker. My presentation is What is Kwanzaa? Reconnecting African Americans to African culture for self-empowerment in the era of Donald Trump. Because your history and culture has to teach you how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future. If your history and culture is not helping you deal with what's going on today and plan for the future, there's a problem. Then on New Year's Eve, December 31st, Sunday, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., I'll be doing a presentation. African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. Same place, Kairos Unity Center. Both days, a free event, donations accepted. Both days. So come on out and visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com for more information about that as well.
Yes, and also you can follow me on Facebook at Herb Alchemist. That's HERB space ALKHEMYST. I also do videos covering various health topics, largely focusing on male and female reproductive health, also decoding the Black genocide, things of that nature. So definitely check out my videos.
Decoding the Black genocide. Okay. Give people your website address because somebody asked for the website address here on Facebook. What's the website address for that Herb Alchemist?
Amos is the first one. Amos, HSAMMAS.
Slow down. Say it again.
AMMASHS.com.
Okay.
That's the first one.
AMMASHS.
Yes, .com. Okay. And the second site is Glee Elixir. This is just for my female reproductive health elixir. It's also where you can get information. If you subscribe, I throw hip hop parties and things of that nature as well. Have Yoni stream. Yeah, and that's GLELIXIR.com.
Spell that again.
GLELIXIR.com.
Okay, GLELXIR.com?
No, GLELIXIR.
Okay. Okay, G Elixir. All right. So you posted that on Facebook also. All right. Well, look, I look forward to seeing the Los Angeles family, the 30th and 31st, 2017, December. If you want to interview me while I'm in Los Angeles, because I'm going to stay over. So I'll probably leave January 3rd, 2018. Email me info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com if you want to set up an interview with me. And also be sure to visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, for DVD lectures from Michael Imhotep. We have documentaries there, like the 1804 documentary dealing with the hidden history of the Haitian Revolution, Elementary Genocide Part 3, Academic Holocaust, which I'm in with Professor Kaba Kamene and Professor James Small. The Black Friday documentaries, Black Friday Part 2 is out. And I'll be in Atlanta Friday, December 29th for screening and discussion of Black Friday Part 2 at the Shrine of the Black Madonna. We have that flyer at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, sister. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for interviewing me. I look forward to seeing you and the Los Angeles family this coming weekend. Okay?
Absolutely. We're looking forward as well. Thank you so much, Brother Imhotep, and we hope to see everybody who's in the LA area. We hope you come and show up for the event. Again, the address is 7825 Western Avenue. We also have service that morning beginning at 10 a.m. on Sunday. We have service every Sunday. And again, you can just come and, just learn about Kemetic principles, has you, gets your week set up in a positive way. We give out affirmations. There's always various events going on at the center. So if you've never even heard of Kairos Unity Center, it's definitely a place that you want to know about so that you can stay hip to the cultural activities that are going on within your community.
All right, sister. Talk to you later, okay?
You too. Take care.
All right, peace. Hotel. All right, family. So that was on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Be sure to read my articles at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Listen to podcasts of our shows, almost 800 podcasts. I just uploaded 4 podcasts on December 23rd, yesterday. Just uploaded 4 new podcasts yesterday. Okay, so check that out as well. My DVD lectures are there. We have bundle packs, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. Share this broadcast on your own Facebook page, okay? Share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Check us out on YouTube, Michael Imhotep on YouTube, IMHOTEP. And remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.